Okay, good morning again, everybody. This is our, believe it or not, 31st session of this wandering through the big book thing that we're doing. And this is our first session on fear. And so I'm going to read the fear page 68, but first just want to make some introductory comments. I have found the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and these steps and the whole deal has really been revolutionary for me. My life is just so different today than it was before being in here and doing this work. And I'm constantly struck by a number of revolutionary statements that the book has made, most of which took me a long time to even see. Um, the last of these revolutionary statements was the last one the last one that I saw was what we read this morning, that the proper use of the human will is for me to be asking all day long, constantly, God, how can I best serve you? I didn't even, I must have read that line 100 times, but I never, somehow never took it in. And the first one of these lines that got me, um, George asked me to read pages 84 to 88, 80, yeah, 84 to 8, maybe 83. And after 2 weeks of reading that, I noticed that it said, on awakening, as I considered my plans for the day, I was to ask God to direct my thinking. It took me 2 weeks to see that phrase. And I just remember my little mind going, what? What are you saying? Wait a minute, hold on. I'm supposed to ask God, whatever God is, to direct my thinking? You can't be serious, and it just kind of blew my mind. And then some other lines that came up were the bottom of page 25, saying, we read that one this morning too. Um, if you're a real alcoholic, you only get two choices. There are only two choices for your future behavior. Go on to the bitter end, whatever that means to you, trying to blot out of your mind how miserable you are. That's one. Or two, accept spiritual help. Accept spiritual help. That's amazing. Accept. It's already here. It's already available to you, and you keep rejecting it. All you got to do is accept it. I thought I had lots of options. It's saying, no, I don't. Um, and then you get to the pages we're involved with now, resentment and fear and sex conduct, as we're inventorying those things. And each of those pages, page 67, 68, 69, they say, don't do this and do this. And each one of those pages, it's a revolutionary point of view, I think, for me. 67 says, avoid retaliation or argument. They don't work. They're not helpful. They don't change things. I've had a horribly resentful life in many ways. Um, and I'm convinced today, another revolutionary part of this teaching is that we've gone through this a number of times, so I'm sorry to repeat, but um, I have to tell myself three pretty serious lies to sponsor a resentment. For line number one, I'm unhappy, but it is not my fault. It is your fault. If you would change the way you're treating me, I could be happy. And frankly, you'd be a better person. Line number two, here's a really effective way to change your behavior. I'm going to hate on you. You're not going to like that. So you're going to change your behavior in order to stop me from hating on you. Resentment is a good idea. After you change, you'll be a better person. I'll be happier, and the world, frankly, will be a better place, all based on the power of resentment. Um, I don't like thinking about that. And of course, the third lie is the hardest one to grapple with. I could never do what you're doing to me. I could never behave that way toward another person. In fact, that's what gives me the right to resent you. I'd never treat somebody else that way. So we've been through that, but the key thing that I learned from a 4-column resentment inventory is that my annoyance with you or with life or with the situation or frankly with God, because I think a lot of resentments come down to God. I'm resenting God for giving me the life that I seem to have. It's not my fault. God gave me this life, and God, you frankly, or I'm resenting somebody else. God, you didn't do a very good job with this person over here, and that's why they're causing such trouble. I think you could be if you're czar of the universe, I think you could do a better job. Um, So let's see. So resentment, avoid retaliation and argument, seek a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. And I wish they had just stopped, put a period after seek a kindly and tolerant view. Why'd they have to add each and every one? Isn't it okay if I resent somebody? I have a lot of resentment for people like Putin and other figures that I think are causing horrible pain in the world, and I don't understand it. And frankly, I resent the book for telling me I'm supposed to have a kindly and tolerant view. I know it would feel better, but I'm just not able to do it. Okay, page 68, the page we're dealing with today, says we never apologize for God. That's what we don't do. Apologize for God. Um, which it raises a huge question. How do I apologize for God? And I'll get to that in a minute. But instead, it says, we let God demonstrate through us what God can do. Well, that's a tall order, quite frankly. I'm busy living my life, dealing with what I think are my problems, and you're telling me that I'm supposed to let God demonstrate through me what God can do? Um, And it takes me right back to, isn't that what the third step prayer says? Take away my difficulties, that my victory over these difficulties will demonstrate your power, your love, your way of life. I mean, we're praying for that. And 68 is just saying it again in a different way. And then finally, you get to 69, avoid and seek. 69 says, we do not judge. We want to stay out of this controversy. We're not to be the arbiters of somebody else's sex conduct. And we've said many times, it's not about sex, it's about our human interactions. It's just amplified when you're doing it around sex, but it shows up emotionally, shows up financially, shows up all kinds of different ways. We do not judge. And instead it says, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. Give us the power to live up to them, because lack of power is always our dilemma. We're dealing with fear today, and my fear is always comes down to my lack of power to handle whatever seems to be coming at me. Which begs the question, well, then if I don't want to experience what I'm experiencing, how do I get the power to experience it differently. If lack of power is my dilemma, then tell me how to get the power. And we do that through prayer, meditation, service. The fear prayer is, please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And Emmett Fox is going to add on to that. Vague prayers bring vague results. Specific prayers bring specific results. The more specific I can get about what I'm afraid of, the more specific the result of the prayer will be. And the great value of a fear inventory is discovering, one, what am I really afraid of? And that takes some work. And I think it takes another person. I don't think we can do that alone interiorly. I think it takes another person sitting outside of our thought system and saying, well, why does that trouble you? Not to discount the fear. You know, we're going to have at least 2 sessions on fear and one of them is just describing the problem, and then the other is going to be, well, what do you do about it? How do you get to a positive outcome? So the more specific I can be about the fear, the better off I'm going to do. And that takes me personally, it may not work for you, right back to a 4-column resentment inventory, because what has been revolutionary for me is to discover that my anger toward God, toward the world, toward you specifically, is my first responder to fear. The book says to conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. You know, I have spent a lot of time staying in that place. I'm right, you are wrong. What are we going to do about it? And not recognizing that my anger, which I loved, frankly, I loved my anger. I think we talked about this last time, because it overcomes my self-doubt. My self-doubt, one of my deepest fears is, what am I supposed to do? Will you please tell me what I'm supposed to do? And I've tried to answer that with my self-reliance. And then this friggin' book comes along and says, so we put our fears down on paper, asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Boom, game over. Whoa, you're telling me that the reason I fear is because all of my strategies for trying to handle whatever's coming at me in life, my self-reliance can't do it. In fact, it takes you right back to, God, please direct my thinking, which I can't do. I mean, as close as I can get to, I've never felt God directing my thinking. I just haven't been able to feel it as far as I can get. I mean, I have felt it in terms of intuitions or nudges, or, you know, the book calls it inspiration, intuition, hunches, that kind of stuff in step 11. I have felt that, but I've never felt God directing my thinking. The closest I can get is red light, green light. Is, well, God, I'm not feeling you direct my thinking, so I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking, and then maybe you could just give me a red light. No, 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 don't go that way. A green light, yeah, that's pretty good. Go that way. Or a yellow light. Slow down. Let's talk. I've been able to make that work for me, and I've been doing that for a while. And I can't say that it's ever failed me. I think sometimes I'm colorblind and I'm getting a yellow light, but I'll see it as red. And my sponsor often says, you know, trouble is when I get a yellow light, I speed up. I don't slow down. I just start going faster. So any rate, so I'm trying to say that I want to get to reading. I'm trying to say that the benefit of the 3rd column of the resentment inventory process is that I'm to look at these different manifestations of self. Now, I don't, I guess you're saying the human ego, my sense of I'm a separate from you thing, and um, and the way that manifests is my feeling. And we get 7 words: pride, self-esteem, ambitions, personal relations, sex relations, pocketbook, sense of safety, security, sense of safety. Well, those are manifestations of a human being, and we are to look for where is my manifestation of this hurt or threatened. That means fear. I used to do the third column as multiple choice because usually my answer was all of the above. This affects all of the above. Affects my pride, my self-esteem, my ambitions, all those different words. I've learned since that the main one that happens for me is ambitions. I've always been very ambitious. I've always had a sense of this is what I want to happen here. And when you get in the way of this happening, I am frightened that my ambition will not come true and I go nuts. And anger is how I respond to that. Get out of my way. Lead, follow, or get out of the way because I'm coming through. Um, and that's gotten me to, I mean, I can do a direct relationship between God, how can I best serve you? What is your will for me? And my ambitions, because I'm always clear, well, this is what I want. I'm surprised you can't see that or you don't agree or whatever it is. So, okay, so I'm going to read because that's important. I know there's other things I wanted to say, but we'll just wait to see them come in. Okay, so I'm in the book at the bottom of page 67, and this is after we've done the 4th column of a resentment inventory. And notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. I didn't see that for sure. When I'm stuck in self-justified anger, I'm not seeing that there's fear involved. That's why I'm saying the importance of it, of discovering that, at least for me, fear is what ultimately why I drank. The fear was the alcohol was the one thing that would take away my fear instantly. And I could sigh and I could be okay. And whatever the fear was, I wasn't aware of. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. I didn't know this. This is a weaving term. The shot is referring to weaving. And what it means is that every other, either vertical or horizontal, is a thread of fear. And it just means that the fabric is not going to hold up. Um, fear, set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. Of course, you know, I'm unhappy, but it's not my fault. It's your fault. The innocent victim, you know. Um, but did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. I'm on page 68 now. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. Well, they're saying that because, as I say, resentment, the inventory is the first place where I started finding fear and started recognizing that it was my fear that powered my attempt to change somebody else by resenting them. Um, but there are fears that they don't show up as a result of resentment. My I've always had a number of fears. I've always had a fear of being physically tortured. I don't know why. I don't know where that, um, where somebody else is deliberately causing me pain and I'm tied up in a chair or I'm whatever, but they are, for whatever reason, physically causing me pain. And my fear is I'm going to explode. I'm going to blow up. I won't be able to handle it. I won't be able to endure it. Um, I have no idea why that's there. Um, I've had a mental fear that pretty much comes down to a a wasted life. I remember waking up. I was pushing 40 years old, waking up in severe pain, hobbling into the doctor's office. He took one look at me and he said, "You've got a kidney stone. Go to the emergency room. I'll be," I mean, he saw me from the hallway. "You got a kidney stone. Go to the emergency room. I'll be over there in half an hour or whatever." And so I'm laying on this gurney, um, angry because this pain is so severe. And why can't they get me a painkiller quickly? And I get this voice inside. Of course, I always am gonna die. I mean, I can run out of toothpaste, and my my mind concludes we're gonna die. It just doesn't take much for me to go right from a molehill to we're gonna die. But I'm in such pain, and I don't know I'm thinking you're gonna die, and then this thought comes to me. It's one of those. This was a God shot. Um, you have wasted your whole life being miserable, and now you're gonna die. So I have a fear of wasting time, wasting money, wasting energy. And the way it turns around is an internal accusation. Um, you've wasted your time and you should have known better. That's the twist of the knife for me. You don't want to think of yourself as stupid. You should have known. Why didn't you see this? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Why didn't I see this? That this was going to be a waste of some kind. But boy, it was something. You have wasted your whole life being miserable. And so if I was 40 and I come into AA at 63, um, that was another 23 years of misery, a quarter of a century of misery before I could finally get to do something about it through all the stuff that we do. Um, so that's a mental fear for me, is a wasted life, a wasted opportunity. The spiritual fear, that's been more challenging, um, because I know physical fear, there's a benefit to physical fear in that I'm going to survive. Physical fear keeps me here on the planet. I don't want to say, I think hunger is a form of fear. If I don't get some food going in me, I'm not going to be able to maintain the body. I think when I get, if I have a physical pain, there's a fear that I better do something. It's a signal something. But spiritual fear, that's more challenging. And I think ultimately spiritual fear is I'm not doing God's will for me. I come here, remember the guy saying, "You are here. It's not about you." It's the way he starts it. It's not about you. You are here for God's purpose, by God's purpose. Wait a minute. That wasn't the deal. You are here for God's purpose, by God's purpose. How can you best serve your creator? Um, okay, any rate, so this thing, we reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no connection, no resentment in connection with them. Wasn't it because self reliance failed us? Bada boom, bada bang. Holy smokes. You're telling me that at the bottom of my fear is my lack of power, uh, and the fact that my self-reliance, my relying on this or my body to tell me what to do has failed me. This is this is horrible. I mean, if if my self-reliance fails me, how am I, what do I do? And of course, what they're going to say, well, let's see. Um, Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? That's why I fear. Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it did not fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. You know, another word for cocky is complacent. And you know, step 10 is warning us about being complacent. Complacent means satisfied with my efforts, and I don't need to do any more. You know, um, perhaps there is a better way. We think so. For we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role God assigns. And then here's the sentence that we read this morning, just a little bit different. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. For me, this line, I want to go back to the others, but this line says the whole deal in a single sentence for me. That just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and I behave the way I think God wants me to behave, which means I've asked God to mold my ideals and help me live up to them. Just to the extent that I do those two things, humbly rely on God through prayer and meditation, and be the person God wants me to be through service, through my daily life, I will be enabled, I will get the power, I will be enabled to match the calamity, the human calamity, with serenity of knowing that I'm doing my job and it's going to be okay, that my soul, my spirit will survive whatever happens in my human life. Um, and that's what will enable me to have a kindly and tolerant view of whatever's going on. Um, but to back up, so you'll remember that there are a lot of people in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous that will say that this book, that every sentence in this book is the truth of the experience of the people that wrote the book. And that if I take every sentence and I try to turn it into a question and I say, is this true for me? There's a whole process here. Is this true for me? Well, no, it's not. Um, I don't, let's see what it says. We think there's a better way. We're now on a different basis. Am I now on a different basis? No, I'm not. Do I want to be on a different basis? Yeah, I do. The people that seem to be on this different basis seem to be handling their lives a lot better than I am. Well, then, am I willing to do what they said they did to get into this uh, state that they're this state of serenity or whatever it is? And if my answer is, well, no, I'm not ready to do that stuff, that just seems too hard or too much trouble. Then the next question is, well, am I willing to pray for willingness? Now that's where this red light, green light happens for me, because many times I've gotten a nudge, even doing this thing that we're doing right now, and the whole Me having done these big book workshops and written up this study guide, so often because I'm a perfectionist, I've not wanted to do it. I've not wanted to struggle with anything where I doesn't matter, but every time I'd want to do something different, I try to practice the art of distraction. If this is the agenda, I try to go over, I decide this is more important right now, so I don't have to do this. I'll attend to that. And, but then I would stop and I'd go, do you really want me to do this? And I'd get a green light. And then I'd be able to say, well, then you got to give me the power to do it, because lack of power is my dilemma. And I would get the power. Emmett Fox says, once you get confirmation that this is what your spiritual creator wants you to do, then you can claim the power to do it. Gets you over this lack of power barrier. Am I now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God? Do I trust infinite God rather than my finite human self? A, we were powerless over alcohol and could not manage our own lives. B, probably no human power could relieve our alcoholism. C, God could and would if he were sought. Am I still stuck in human power, trying to solve what ultimately is a spiritual problem with human power? Have I admitted that no human power is going to relieve my alcoholism? We are in the world to play the role God assigns. Am I in this world to play the role? No, sirree. I ain't playing no role somebody else is assigning me. I'm going to pick up that role and go for it. This was huge for me. It not only, I can't even, do I trust infinite God? Well, I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean trust God? I don't trust anybody. You're asking me to trust God? Am I in this world to play the role God assigns? And then the promise that just to the extent that I play that role and humbly rely on God, actually, I like to reverse the order personally. I think it starts with humble reliance. I've got to be able to humbly rely on, and the kicker for me is humble. Humble meaning that I'm not coming at this with a huge sense of self that I need to protect and defend or promote. Later in the study guide, it starts talking about the Enneagram and fear, and we actually we recorded a session on that 2 years ago. It's an amazing system of looking at fear and how it affects us and how we respond to fear, what we do about it. And I've learned so much about that. I am his nickname is Type 1, the perfectionist. And I always thought I wanted to do everything the right way. That's been my, quandary. What is the right way? Because I kept hearing my father, there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And it's easier to do this thing the right way than it is to do the wrong way, and all this stuff. And somehow I took that in and I love our book and our process because this starts with Joe and Charlie. You've probably heard it, Joe and Charlie saying there is no right way to do the steps, and there's only one wrong way. And the wrong way is not to do them. Our book is extremely flexible in terms of, and really the only thing that matters is it working for you? My sponsor, he could be so annoying, I'd put out my, stuff And he'd say, "Well, how's that working for you?" And oh, I hated that. Um, at any rate, uh, okay, so I'm gonna get to this last paragraph, and but I think that, oh yes, one more thing. So if it's true that if I humbly rely on God and I try to be the person that I think God wants me to be, that I will get the power to feel okayness, serene, patient, tolerant, kind, and loving, faith, hope, and love. Um, I will get the power to meet the calamity. Doesn't say the calamity is going to stop. It doesn't say, you won't experience any more calamities. The calamity's happening 24/7, 365. It's been happening literally thousands of years. The drugs have gotten stronger, the weapons have gotten more destructive, but we're doing the same stuff to each other we did with when we were tribes with clubs. And people been getting drunk for thousands of years, getting addicted to stuff. So calamity's not going to change. What's going to change is how I meet the calamity. Okay, we never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it's the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. That's a wonderful statement. If I can develop the faith, I will receive the courage, which really means the power to proceed. And faith means conscious contact, not a theoretical wondering about God, but actually experiencing spiritual guidance, I guess you'd say. That's what the Oxford groups, that was our foundation, is that I was to spend time early in the day seeking God's guidance for my life around some situation. The 24-hour a day book, that the meditations in that book all come from an Oxford group book called God Calling by Two Listeners. And day by day, if you get that God Calling and you got the 24-hour book and you go to January 28th, you'll see the relation between what Richmond Walker, that wrote the 24-hour a day book, see where he got the substance of the meditation. Now I've lost my place. Any rate, okay, never apologize for anyone for depending upon our Creator. This is another question. How do I apologize for God? Um, my self-pity is an apology for God. My perfectionism is an apology for God. My resentment is an apology for God. God, you're letting this stuff happen. I don't think it's a good idea. I got to use the power of resentment to change the world here. It's a really interesting question. How do I apologize for God? The verdict of the ages, faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. Do I trust my God? We never apologize for God. Do I apologize for God? Instead, we let God demonstrate through us what he can do. And then here comes the fear prayer. We ask God to remove our fear and direct our attention to what God would have us be, not what God would have us do. What God would have us do is let God demonstrate through us what God can do. What God would have us be, for me, shows up in one of those readings that we read earlier. It's before the ninth step promises. It's top of page 83, I'm pretty sure. So we ask our Creator, acknowledging I am a created being. I didn't make myself. We ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way, because I can't figure out the way with my self-reliance. Show me the way of patience and tolerance and kindness and love. Those are 4 words that mean serenity, far as I can tell. I don't need anything or anybody to be different than it is right here, right now. I'm okay right here, right now, because I believe I am doing God's will for me. And in the end, that's the only thing that really matters. Am I serving God in the way God wants me to serve God? It's a whole lot easier to say than it is to do. I have to remind myself that that's what I'm supposed to be asking all the time. I don't go to it normally. One of those, I went through this awful period of life, depression, sober, 10 years sober. Couldn't get out of bed for a year. Could hardly get out of bed. And it was such a, that's when I started. Today I look at it as relapsing on self-pity. That's what I was doing. And it gave me an excuse to do nothing. That was the one benefit of it. I didn't do anything. Um, and as a result of that, I discovered that my real fear, my deepest fear, is my powerlessness over me. I was basically torturing myself. One of my deepest fears, torturing myself and feeling absolutely useless and like I had wasted all this. I mean, I've worked pretty hard at this thing because I came in here late and I've been on a tear to try to catch up or at least come to a better life. And what I learned was that my deepest fear is my powerlessness over me. And I learned in no uncertain terms how hard I have to work at this on a daily basis to feel good. I feel as good today as I've ever felt my entire frickin' life. And that blows my mind and makes me very grateful. Okay. The prayer for removal. We ask God to remove our fear. And just remember Emmett Fox saying, vague prayer, vague result, specific prayer to remove my fear that somebody else is threatening my way of life, my self-concept, something. I don't know what. Um, get as specific about the sphere as you can. And if you're having trouble getting specific, go to the third column of a resentment inventory and start looking for where is this situation affecting my pride, my self-esteem, my ambitions, my sense of personal security, my personal relationships, including sex, my pocketbook. Where is it? What part of me is being hurt or threatened by their behavior? And then pray for its removal and direct our attention to what God would have us be at once we begin, we commence. Doesn't say the fear is removed. I'm just going to tell you one more story that I've told you before. I've always been involved in the financial world. And there was a time I was 2 years in the program sober, and the financial markets were getting squirrely, as they often do. And I had a serious fear of financial collapse. And I'm, new in the program and new in the book. And somebody said, well, have you prayed about it? Have you tried the fear prayer? What's the fear prayer? Well, go to page 68. You'll find the fear prayer. Oh, so here's the fear prayer. We ask God to remove our fear and direct our attention to what God would have us be. Okay, so I got on my knees. Prayer was not the part of my life that it is today. Got on my knees. God, would you please remove my fear of financial collapse, um, and direct my attention to what you would have me be? And I got something. And what sometimes my higher power is a little disrespectful. Um, yeah, I got something. What I got was, you silly boy. You silly boy. Don't you understand that you can be the person I want you to be, and you don't have to be rich to be that person? I'm telling you. Wow. I don't? um, that was an awesome moment for me. That was my first really experience of conscious contact of, and my first astounding, wow, prayer works. Wow. Okay, that's enough. So we're gonna stop this recording, and we're gonna have some open discussion. And I thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate the chance to do this. So hope to see you next time. Thank you.